Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most overlooked, yet absolutely vital pieces of military hardware from the Second World War. We're going way beyond the famous Tiger and Panther tanks to find the real workhorse of the German army.
Okay, so let me ask you something. When I say German World War II armor, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most people, it's going to be the sleek, deadly Panther or maybe the hulking, fearsome Tiger. But what if I told you the single most important vehicle, the one the entire German war machine really depended on, was something else entirely?
The answer is this: the humble half-track. These things were absolutely everywhere, from the frozen steppes of Russia, just like you see here, to the deserts of North Africa and the fields of France. These vehicles were the connective tissue of the German army, the real key to its whole revolutionary way of fighting.
So why? Why was this vehicle so critical? Well, it all comes down to solving one massive problem that nobody could crack in the trenches of World War I, the problem of speed. You see, after the total stalemate of the First World War, military strategists knew that tanks were the future. But they also learned a very hard lesson. A tank charging ahead all by itself is basically a dead tank. For this new idea of blitzkrieg, or lightning war, to actually work, the whole army, the infantry, the big artillery guns, the engineers, all of it had to move at the speed of a tank across any kind of terrain.
And the solution they came up with was the half-track. It was honestly a brilliant hybrid design. You get the simple, easy steering of a wheeled truck up front, but you combine it with the incredible cross-country grip and power of a tank's tracks in the back. It was truly the best of both worlds, able to haul heavy loads through mud, snow, and sand that would stop a normal truck dead in its tracks. Now you're going to see these vehicles called SKFZ, which is just short for a real mouthful, Sonderkraftfahrzeug. It literally means special purpose vehicle, and believe me, the Germans had a special purpose for everything. The list of SKFZ numbers assigned just to half-track variants is enormous. And that's our first big clue to just how staggeringly versatile these things were. And that versatility, it started with the most basic job in any army, carrying all the heavy stuff. This first family of half-tracks were the prime movers, the unarmored workhorses that literally pulled the Wehrmacht forward. Now, what's just wild is the sheer scale of this concept. I mean, look at this. On the left, you've got the SDK FZ2, that Kettenkrad, which was basically a tracked motorcycle. It could zip around laying communication wires. And then on the right, you have the colossal 18-ton SDK FZ9 FAMO, one of the most powerful military tractors of the entire war. From tiny to massive, same basic idea. But maybe their most crucial role was towing artillery. A big gun is totally useless if it can't get to the battle on time. This 8-ton Sled KFZ-7 is hauling the legendary 88mm flak gun. And it's because of its half-track prime mover that this devastating anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapon could follow the panzers literally anywhere, providing that critical fire support right up at the front lines. And what about when those panzers broke down or got stuck in that infamous Russian mud? Well, you couldn't just call a standard tow truck. No way. You needed the immense power of a vehicle like this, SDKFC-9, to pull a 25-ton tank out of trouble. Vehicle recovery was an absolutely essential, brutal job that only these heavy half-tracks could even think about doing. But towing guns and pulling tanks out of the mud was only half the story. The next evolution of the half-track put it directly into the firing line, creating the armored fist of the German infantry. Now, this is the one you probably recognize, the SDKFZ-251. It was basically an armored personnel carrier, a battlefield taxi for the elite mechanized infantry, the Panzer Grenadiers. This vehicle became an absolute icon, totally synonymous with the Blitzkrieg itself. And this image right here illustrates its purpose perfectly. The 251's armor was just enough to protect a squad of infantry from shell splinters and machine gun fire, letting them ride right into the heart of the battle. They could then jump out and fight on foot, supported by the half-track's own machine guns, all perfectly in sync with the attacking tanks. This was combined arms warfare made real. So they towed the guns and they carried the infantry, but the real genius of the half-track design, the thing that made it so indispensable, was its incredible adaptability. It was the ultimate modular weapons platform. Because if you take a standard half-track chassis, you can turn it into almost anything. On the left, an SKVZZ-7 becomes a mobile anti-aircraft platform with 4 20mm cannons spitting fire. On the right, an armored half-track becomes a Panzerwerfer, a terrifying mobile rocket launcher. Same basic vehicle, totally different job.
And the variations were just seemingly endless. I mean, you need to clear out a bunker? Okay, there was an SDKFC 251 with built-in flamethrowers. Need to get across a stream? The combat engineers had a version that carried its own little assault bridges. It was the absolute Swiss Army knife of the Wehrmacht.
Now, this versatility is impressive, for sure. But the real proof, the undeniable evidence of the half-track's importance, comes down to one simple thing: the numbers. The sheer scale of production tells the whole story. So let's just look at the data for a second. During the war, Germany produced almost 22,000 of the armored personnel carrier types, the 250s and 251s. And on top of that, they built nearly 37,000 of the unarmored tractor versions. These numbers are just huge. But the real aha moment comes when you compare that to those famous tanks. Germany built a total of about 6,500 Panther tanks. They built fewer than 2,000 Tiger I and Tiger II tanks combined. Now, compare that to the more than 58,000 half-tracks. It's not even close. So here's the crucial point, the main takeaway. For every single Tiger tank that rolled off the production line, the German army built over 30 half-tracks. 30. They weren't as glamorous, they weren't as scary, but they were the vehicles that made the entire system work. Of course, because they were everywhere, it also meant they were destroyed in huge numbers. This somber image of a knocked-out half-track is a stark reminder that behind all the production numbers and the technical specs, these vehicles were crewed by soldiers, and they were right in the heart of the fighting, all the way to the final desperate battles of the war. Which leaves us with a final question. The half-track couldn't knock out an enemy tank, and it definitely wasn't the most heavily armored vehicle on the field. But by towing the guns, by carrying the infantry, and by doing dozens of other vital jobs, it kept the panzers from fighting alone. It was the vehicle that made an entire doctrine of warfare possible. So, was this humble workhorse the true engine of the Blitzkrieg? I'll let you think about that one.